Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Safe Travels podcast. My name is Joey. Today we are at Zion National Park and we sat down with Park Ranger Charlie Reed to talk all about Zion, from geology to wildlife, and we even learned some tips on how to best enjoy the dark night sky here. Charlie, we are at one of my favorite parks in all the country, Zion. It's absolutely beautiful. How long have you been at this park, and what's your journey been like with the National Park Service?
Yeah, no, I've been here for about 2.5 years now, and I'm the supervisory interpretive park ranger here at this park. And then I've been in the Park Service I just passed my 10-year mark in the Park Service. Before here was Great Basin National Park as the Astronomy ranger, and then before that as a interpretive park guide at Carlsbad Caverns National Park.
And what got you interested in the field and speaking with the public as an interpretive ranger?
That's a good question. Being in college and realizing what you wanted to go to college for, you didn't want to do no more. So you had to kind of figure it out on the fly. As I was in college, I was working outdoors, teaching people how to be in the outdoors and how to actually just be in these environments safely, but also enjoyably. And I asked myself the question, well, how do I do that for a real job? Park Service is the closest thing I came down on. So then I put all my efforts into trying to get a job with the Park Service and was very lucky to land a job with Carlsbad Caverns National Park.
In your couple of years here at Zion, what has made you fall in love with this park specifically?
Yeah, this park is incredibly special. This is a really, really cool place. I would probably say the variation of this park. This park is an incredibly dynamic area, incredibly dynamic landscape. Everything is always changing here. And that's what makes it really special. One day it could be hot as blazes. The next day it could be snowing. That happens in our seasonal training in the spring all the time. It's going to be 100 degrees today, but tomorrow we're expecting snow. So get ready for it. There could be massive floods working their way through the canyon, changing how this river looks. Just always changing, always changing.
Do you have a favorite way that you recreate or find peace in this park?
How do I recreate in this park? I do. I try to go to a little bit more of the less visited areas of the park. I try to go into some of the canyons and then maybe hiking in some of the wilderness trails. 84% of this park is designated wilderness. And so I like to engage with that, but that brings a whole nother level of preparedness that's needed and knowledge that is needed for this park. So we encourage it, but we encourage it responsibly.
So we are in a library right now inside of the Zion Museum of Human History, and I'm sure there's a lot of information in this room about this park. But when you enter Zion, what makes this place special and what are you looking at?
So when you come into Zion Canyon, you are looking at millions and millions and millions and millions of years of rock that has been uplifted as part of the Colorado Plateau, and you are seeing exposure of many, 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 many layers of this sandstone and mudstone that has been cut open by the North Fork of the Virgin River. That saw blade action that this river causes on the rock layers has opened it up for us to be able to see these rock layers. So you're looking up at these 2,000-foot cliffs of Navajo sandstone, and the only reason we can look up at them is because this river opened this canyon for us. So you're seeing that interaction of rock and water together. We have a really, our phrasing here is rock, water, and time. That's the recipe for Zion.
This place really is incredible, and I'm sure visitors who have been to Utah have heard the phrasing, the Mighty Five, which encompasses the 5 national parks that are here in Utah. What makes Zion so special being a part of that Mighty Five?
Of course, it is a really special place. I think there are a lot of things that make Zion special. Each one of those 5 parks have their thing. Our thing is the exposure of that Navajo sandstone that we talked about earlier. But also I think a thing worth talking about here at Zion is that we are an incredibly accessible park when it comes down to being able to get here. We're pretty close to an interstate. We're pretty close to 2 major metropolitan areas. So it's easier for a lot of people to get here compared to those other 4 that are a little bit more out there. So we do see a lot of first-time visitors here in Zion, which is just a really great experience to be able to see them experience a national park in a wild place for the first time.
You mentioned a little bit about the weather. One thing that I find really unique about Zion that you have to be careful of is when you go on a hike during the summer is monsoon season. What do visitors have to be aware of when they come here during the summer and they're doing, for instance, the Narrows later in the day and those storm clouds might come in fast?
So I want to jump on you there for actually a hot second. You said later in the day, any time of the day, any time of the day. Monsoon season, but frankly, any time in the summer and in the winter that we're expecting precipitation in what we call the headwaters of the North Fork of the Virgin River can pose dangers in the Narrows hike or the Narrows route up the North Fork of the Virgin. So it's not just an afternoon thing, it's any time of the day thing. Precipitation can cause flash flooding. Even quick and rapid snowmelt can cause flash flooding in this area. So we are very cautious about how we interact with that area of the park, the Narrows. We always want to check flash flood potentials that are issued by the Weather Service. We have them at the front desk. We always encourage people to come to us at the desks of the visitor centers to chat with the ranger about the conditions. But to check those, but also just exercise good judgment. If you're getting the heebie-jeebies, there's probably a reason you're getting the heebie-jeebies, and you really need to do that gut check on yourself. It is not an easy hike. It is a gorgeous hike, but you need to be prepared and you need to be well educated on it.
In addition to the Narrows, another really world famous hike here is Angel's Landing. Yeah. What do visitors need to know about that area?
Angel's Landing, once again, as you said, iconic. That's iconic Zion. Narrows and Angel's Landing, iconic Zion, right? And they both have their needs for preparation. For Angel's Landing, first off, you need to know that you're in for a hike. It is a 1,500-foot gain over the course of roughly 2.7 miles one way. Right, so that's a lot of elevation gain. In the summer, that elevation gain can be done possibly when it's 100 degrees outside. So now you got to be really paying attention to heat protocol and really taking care of your body. And then also for Angel's Landing itself, that section does require a permit. Under the Angel's Landing pilot program, in which we do require permits in that area to help increase the quality of the visitor experience on that area, you do need to get your permits ahead of time. So how you do that is two different ways. One, you can do it well ahead of time in our seasonal lottery, or you can do it in the day before lottery. You can apply for a lottery the day before 3 p.m. to try your chances to get a permit for the next day.
Beyond geology at Zion, what can visitors expect to see, and what makes Zion so special beyond the Navajo sandstone that you see here?
Yeah, so Zion has a lot of special things about it. Besides the geology, we can talk about the ecoregions that we sit in. We sit in a convergence, a joining of 3 different ecoregions: the Great Basin, the Colorado Plateau, and the Mojave Desert. So we have species from all 3 of those different ecoregions here, both plants and animals alike. So we get to see a lot of different interactions, biologically speaking, in this area. But also, we're an international dark sky park. An international dark sky park is a place that has been designated to say that this is a place that you can see the brilliant night sky that the American West has to offer. So this park is explored in a lot of different ways, but that's probably one of my favorites, is the night sky.
And we're going to talk a lot more about the night sky here in just a minute and the designations that the park has to follow in order to get the night sky designation. But going back just a step, wildlife that is here in the park. You mentioned the variations of weather from heat to winter. What kind of animal, what kind of wildlife can survive in a place like this that's changing constantly?
That's a really good question, and I think that's an unexpected answer. A lot. There's a lot of life here. There's a lot of life in this canyon and in this area. And it's because we have these canyon walls for protection and places for animals and plants to live and be shaded from the sun. We have this water source that is here year-round for the wildlife to be able to use. There's a lot here. Probably one of the couple most interesting, in my opinion, species that we have around here, wildlife species we have around here, the first one being the Zion snail. Zion snail is this little itty-bitty fella who is pretty small, only about like that big, 3 millimeters big or something like that. It's endemic to this park, meaning that it's only found here. It's actually only found up in the Narrows in a couple special places. And it's because the circumstances and the conditions here are just absolutely perfect for that type of snail. The other species worth talking about absolutely is our California condors. California condor is a recovery effort across the United States to help the largest bird in North America recover. And so with this recovery effort, we have seen California condors here in this area and in Zion Canyon. One of the best places to see them is actually at Big Bend on the shuttle route. Visitors can just go up and maybe have a chance of actually seeing one of these amazing birds with a 9-foot wingspan soaring thousands of feet above them.
Can you talk a little bit more about the recovery effort and why the California condor is so special to the United States?
Sure. So the California condor is the largest bird in North America. It is a scavenging bird. It's a lot of people like to equate it to a turkey vulture or things along those lines, but it's much bigger, much bigger. And the recovery effort took place starting around in the 80s and the 90s when we realized there were not that many birds left in the United States, roughly around 22. Nowadays, there's more than 500 in the United States, in the flocks of Arizona and Utah, and then also the flocks in California, right? These recovery efforts are led by multiple different agencies, but also multiple different private groups as well to be able to monitor these condors. What was pushing them towards extinction is lead poisoning. Was lead poisoning and it still is today. Not being shot, but eating lead out of a gut pile from an animal that was hunted, right? Gut piles have the lead breaking up inside their bodies. The scavenging birds come up and eat the gut piles, and they ingest that lead. That lead causes lead poisoning. And that is the chief reason why these birds are dying.
So how, with the recovery efforts, what does that entail? Is that just giving them more protected spaces for animals that don't have that lead in them? How does that recovery process work?
Sure. So I'm not completely and totally qualified to speak super in-depthly on that. I would definitely push you towards our wildlife specialists to get a really in-depth look at it. But nonetheless, it's testing the birds for lead poisoning, but also just monitoring them and making sure that they're able to do what they need to do. But also it's a lot of public outreach talking about how the birds are being poisoned, and that is lead poisoning. So public outreach, talking to people about lead shot.
You referenced it earlier, but the dark sky here at Zion is something that obviously the park cares deeply about. What is the International Dark Sky Association, and what are the steps that you have to undergo as a park in order to qualify for being a dark sky park?
Yeah, so an International Dark Sky Park through Dark Sky International now, I think is what they've rebranded as. But an International Dark Sky Park has a couple big qualifications. One is that the Milky Way is, quote, readily apparent, and that's absolutely true here during Milky Way season, right? And the other one is that we monitor our light output, is that we have, quote, a lighting management plan, a plan in which we pay attention to how we are lighting outside spaces, and we are doing it in a way that is not throwing extra light up into the atmosphere. That is what causes light pollution. That is the reason a lot of people cannot see the Milky Way at their own homes, because we are accidentally putting a lot of light in the atmosphere. Here in Zion, we've put those plans into place, and we're actively retrofitting lighting fixtures to make sure that we are trying to preserve those night skies.
How does color of that light affect the night sky and your vision?
Yeah, so you've clearly done your research. So color of light matters. Color of light matters a lot, right? So when we are thinking about how are we going to light these public spaces, a lot of consideration goes into the hue of this color. We want warmer colors. Warmer colors interact with the atmosphere differently than like those bright blues. So we're at lower Kelvin, generally speaking, when we're talking about a temperature of light. And we want to stay away from those hot blue lights, those 5,000, 6,000 Kelvin, not great. Lower 3,000, 2,000, much better.
When your eye at night sees a bright white light, how long does it take for your eyes to be able to reset and then recalibrate to being able to view the night sky?
So when you see a bright light and it shines directly in your face, that's a particular type of light pollution we call glare. Right? That's the worst. It's bad, right? And it does chemically reset your eyes. It chemically resets your eyes and takes about 20 to 30 minutes for eyes to adjust to the darkness of the night. That's just the way we work as humans. And so we really do encourage with people, if they're wanting to do stargazing here in Zion, to find a safe place to look up at the night sky, pocket your phone, no flashlights, get away from headlights, because it does take 20 to 30 minutes for your eyes to adjust.
I think for some people, the dark sky is really important. For other people, they haven't experienced it yet. And especially because obviously a lot of people that come to the parks are coming from urban areas where there's tons of light pollution and you can't really see the night sky. And after a long day of hiking in the park, you might come back to your campground, be tired, go in your tent, relax, and go to bed without seeing the night sky. But after learning a lot about the night sky, there's a lot of cultural significance, and there's a lot of ways that you can connect, through ancestry or through many other ways with the night sky, just because you're looking at the same sky here at this park that potentially your ancestors did. Can you talk about the cultural relation that you can have just by viewing the night sky and being able to inherit that?
So let's be really, really clear. Every single group of people in the course of human history across the world have some type of connection to the night sky. We may have lost it in the modern age because of the bright lights that we have around us, but we all have had those connections. Every single culture you go to across the world has stories about the night sky, has stories about the stars and the planets and the sun and the moon. Very, very normal for all of us to talk about those stories that are embedded in the night sky. So it is part of us. The way I personally like to look at it and the way I tell visitors to look at it is to actually scientifically look at it. All of us are made up of chemicals. All of us are made up of chemicals. We're made up of carbon, of hydrogen, and all these other mess of chemicals and atoms. Every single one of those chemicals and atoms at some point in time was made in the interior of collapsing stars. Stars are the reason we have everything around us. They are nuclear fusion reactors making new chemicals all the time. And so everything around us, these canyon walls, the iron in these canyon walls, the carbon in your body, the iron in your blood, all of those came from stars. And so honestly, we have a connection to the stars that exist, and we have the connection to everything around us because we all came from the same place.
That's really interesting. You just blew my mind.
It's a classic Carl Sagan maneuver right there to pull that one out. But it is a really special way, in my opinion, to look at everything around us, because everything around us can kind of feel alien and kind of feel disconnected. Some of us don't have cultural stories that connect us to these areas, but nonetheless, scientifically speaking, we are connected to everything around us.
So what do you see when you look up at the stars? Somebody who's researched this clearly and been involved with it, and one of the things that you need to do to be a dark sky park is education around the dark sky. So in learning and providing all that education to visitors that come, do you look at the sky differently after hosting all of this?
Yeah, so we do night sky programming to help people understand not just only the astronomy of the dark skies, but the effects of dark skies on the park itself and on the land itself. And I think probably the biggest realization that I have had being able to talk with people for almost 5 years about the night sky is that it is something that is part of our lives that most of us don't connect with because of the modern age, right? And being able to get people to actually take a minute, take a breath, and to connect with something that is there all the time is really, really special in my opinion.
This might require you to do some thinking on this one, but has there been a moment where you've been with a visitor and they've seen the Milky Way for the first time and you've shown them the dark sky for the first time and they just had like an aha reaction? What was that like?
That one don't take no thinking, no. So I'll counter with you on that one. It's not when people see the Milky Way for the first time. Most people, when they see the Milky Way for the first time, and I'm hyper-generalizing, but when they see the Milky Way for the first time, they ask me if that's a cloud. It's not, it's the Milky Way. It makes that weird glowy look. But the aha moment, the oh my goodness moment, is when a kid is having a hard time with the optics of a telescope, looking through the eyepiece of a telescope. And then you eventually hear, oh! And it's because we were looking at Saturn, and they've actually finally found Saturn in the eyepiece. Seeing Saturn in a telescope is that aha moment for almost everybody. It's a really, really special moment. It's my first moment in astronomy as a kid, and for a lot of kids that we get to have go to these programs, it's their first moment too with seeing Saturn, and that's a really, really special thing to get them engaged on that level.
Why Saturn?
It just looks great. Like, what do you want? It's a planet, so first off, it's way the heck out there, but you got these rings, you can actually see the rings. It's one of the few things in a telescope that actually looks like what you think it's gonna look like, so that's pretty neat. It's pretty.
How important is it to expose kids and even adults to a park like Zion, and then for them to experience it at night and see the sky? How is important, how do you think that changes their life when they go back to their urban setting? Do you think this is something that you hope they go back and learn more about and kind of spread the message about conservationism and then, what they experienced?
Yeah, so I would hope it changes people's point of view in a couple ways, but one, I would hope it changes their point of view to know that they are connected in a whole, right? Part of being in parks is to connect with your fellow visitors, is to connect with the land, but I would hope a larger idea is to connect with the whole of being in these areas, both night sky places or just home, because we can actually turn homes into night sky areas. Light pollution is the one type of pollution that is 100% reversible, if we chose to do so. And so we can do that. We can take action home with ourselves. We can shield our lights at home. We can change the hues of our outdoor lights at home, put blackout curtains in our living room so that we're not shining our lights outside at night. We can take these actionable items home and actually change the world around us for the better.
Are there animals in the park that use the night sky to navigate?
To use the night sky to navigate, I'm not sure. Are there animals that use the darkness of the night for protection? Absolutely. Are there animals that use the darkness of the night sky to be able to hunt? Absolutely. That is half of this park. It's half of this ecosystem, if not more of this ecosystem. We have sphinx moths, also known as hummingbird moths, that will go up to sacred datura, and basically they're the reason the sacred datura can be pollinated. And people see sacred datura all across this park. It's a really brilliant white flower that only blooms at night. And so it has to be pollinated by a nocturnal animal. So they work together really, really specially. But when it comes to navigation, off the top of my head, I don't know.
And this is the first park that I ever experienced bats at night. And I think they were all around the amphitheater near the South Campground, which I know is under construction right now.
Absolutely.
But how do bats play a role in the night sky here and the night experience at Zion?
You'll see them. They're everywhere. Bats are everywhere in this park once the sun starts to go down. And there are probably a lot of different reasons that they're here and they like this area, but let's talk about a couple things. We don't really have caves here, but we have canyons, and these canyons are very, very close to subterranean habitat. And we also have a water source. Bats need water. They're mammals. They have to drink water pretty regularly. They can't make it that long without water. So they have a water source, and they have a place to live. They have these dark canyons for protection during the day or whenever they're kind of just getting out of the way. So they are here. They are insectivores. We have a pallid bat, for example, that is actually eating scorpions, which is a really fun little relationship to talk about. But we have multiple different species, and they use this area because they have the protection of the cliffs and they have the water source of the river.
In a video that's on the Zion website, it states that half the park is seen after dark. Mm-hmm. Why is that, and why does this Navajo sandstone create such a beautiful canvas for the sky?
Yeah, so half the park is after dark. You'll hear that as you go to multiple national parks that are international dark sky parks, even some that aren't. Sun is only up roughly for 12 hours a day, so what are we doing with the other 12 hours of the day? It's dark. Seeing all national parks from a different perspective of when the sun is down, in my opinion, changes your point of view on the park. Here in Zion, in the summer, it's hot as all get out during the day. The sun goes down, temperatures start to drop, not a crazy amount, but it does start to drop. The harshness of the sun goes away, and you start to hear those bats that we were talking about kind of start chirping and clicking away. You can actually go outside and not feel the oppressive heat. You can engage with this place in a very different way. So we do encourage people to safely go out and engage with this place at night, to experience this place at night, because the night sky itself is kind of the same across wherever you go, but especially here in Zion, no place are you going to get the night sky with the silhouettes of these cliffs and these mountains in front of you kind of framing this beautiful night sky.
You mentioned it earlier, but when is Milky Way season, and how does the rotation of the Earth affect what you're going to view in the night sky here?
So rotation of Earth generally actually just affects nighttime and daytime, right? That's the spin of the Earth is sun setting, sun rising. What we're actually concerned about is we're concerned about its orbital pattern around our sun. That affects what we see in the night sky and when we see it in the night sky. So traditionally speaking, summer is said to be Milky Way season, but honestly, I suggest more September here in this park. The Milky Way will be up earlier in the night, and you won't have to wait as long, so you can actually go to bed like a reasonable adult, right? So September tends to be my favorite for the summer Milky Way. That's the part with the galactic center, the really, really bright stuff. And then the winter Milky Way is also up, and I tend to recommend March time for that, roughly somewhere around March for that. That's counterintuitive to the way most people would answer that question, but it's because I like to go to bed at like 11, so I don't want to stay up too late.
Is there areas in the park that are known as like viewing areas or the best place to view the Milky Way or the night sky?
That's a really, really good question, and the short answer to that question is yes. The long answer to that question is we encourage anybody who has a question like that to come up to our visitor center desk, and we'll be able to give you a list of those places. One of those places is the Human History Museum, the place you are right here. Our back patio is a ADA accessible area where people can come up and view the night sky right from our back patio with those beautiful silhouettes of the cliffs right in front of them.
And obviously, if people are traveling in the park at night, what are some concerns of that? If you're driving through a canyon, obviously wildlife you mentioned can be out at night. Yeah. What are ways to find a night sky but be able to move around the park safely when visibility isn't obviously at its highest?
So first and foremost, when you're driving in a national park, you're driving at night at all, have your headlights on. A lot of people hear our messaging about turning off lights and they take it a little too far and they try to drive around without their headlights on. Do not do that. Have your headlights on, drive safely, focus on the road, watch out for wildlife on the road. Our wildlife does like to get in the road. So do pay attention. But then once you find the place that you're going to stargaze, that's where you want to make sure that you are not in the road, because people are traveling through this very busy national park, even at night. Get off the road, get off of the pavement so that you're not exposing yourself to any danger or risk when it comes to interacting with a vehicle. So that's why we do suggest those places to stargaze, like the Human History Museum or the Peruse Trail, for example, is a place that's completely away from cars and you can just walk out on your own.
We touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but what gets you out of bed in terms of coming to the park and educating visitors about the night sky and just about how special this place is?
Well, as a person who's not from this area, I wasn't born or raised in this area, but I have personally found a connection to this place. I think everybody can connect to wherever they are, and I get the opportunity to help people do that. I get to talk to people about the stars, I get to talk to people about the rocks, I get to talk to people about the little bugs that no one even notices. And to see people engage with those, to ask more questions, but maybe, fingers crossed, hopefully want to protect and take action to protect these things. That's probably the most rewarding thing about my job, is inspiring that protection, inspiring that care, inspiring that stewardship.
You talked about your connection with this park and being here, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the native peoples who have existed in this land, especially when it comes to relating culture to the night sky. Can you touch on that and the cultural significance of the people that have existed here since time immemorial and their connection to this area?
Right. So first, I would encourage anybody who's interested. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to reach out to them directly. The Southern Paiute people have a strong connection to this park, as just one of many examples. They are active astronomers. They are using traditional ecological knowledge to continue to study the night sky as they have forever. So I would encourage anybody to reach out to them, or for you to reach out to them, but they are actively studying these areas, actively studying the stories and the stars themselves, and continuing that connection to this land.
The park conducts a lot of studies in various areas around Zion. Does the park also conduct studies for the night sky too?
So do we conduct any studies for the night sky? I'm not currently aware of any in this park, but one thing we do is we continue to monitor the night sky. Every single year, we are keeping track of what we call the darkness of this park. It's actually a quantifiable piece of data that we take readings in multiple locations across the park. And we are using that data to see how the night is changing in multiple different locations across the park. And we continue to update that data every single year. It's through the International Dark Sky Association, and you can actually find those reports on their website to see how it's changed throughout the year.
What city is causing the most light pollution in this area?
Well, when we talk about light pollution, it's a collective thing. We have Springdale, but Springdale is an international dark sky community, but yet we still get a little bit of a light bubble. We have Hurricane and Lavercan. We get a little bit of light bubble from them. You can see St. George from here, but you can, fun fact, if you get up in the Highlands, you can see Las Vegas and Salt Lake City from this park. Light just keeps going in the atmosphere, so you can see them from hundreds of miles away, these light bubbles of cities that are affecting our view shed here in this park.
Well, as we wrap this up, I want to give you the chance with any final thoughts on why a visitor should come here and experience Zion during the day and at night.
Zion is one of those iconic parks. It's special. Almost every single person who comes to this park gets out of the car and is incredibly overwhelmed. And that's normal. And I want to encourage everybody to understand that that is a normal feeling, to get here and be overwhelmed. Just like when you see the Milky Way for the first time, most people are overwhelmed. 80% of Americans cannot see the Milky Way from their backyard, from their front porch, or wherever they live. It's normal to be overwhelmed by these amazing places. Let yourself be overwhelmed by these amazing places. Ask the rangers questions you have, the questions that you have. Sometimes we'll give you an answer, sometimes we'll tell you we don't know and try to point you in the right direction. Please ask questions, but also allow yourself to be in these spaces so that you can get that sense of overwhelmed, because it's probably a good thing to truly understand this landscape and the stories in the landscape.
Charlie, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Safe Travels podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast getting to meet and chat with Charlie, and I really hope you get to come and enjoy this amazing national park. So if you like this type of content, it would mean a lot to me if you liked, commented, and subscribed wherever you're watching or listening to it from, as it really does help us out. So until next time, safe travels.